Very, very good evening. A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows. And welcome not to the Dan Really Likes Wine studio, but instead this week, or this particular Thursday, to the Cape Sun. I'm down in Cape Town just for the evening to host the launch of the ABSA Cape Epic, which the ABSA Cape Epic team think I come down to do out of an interest in the actual cycling. That's not true at all. It's an interest in seeing where the race is going to go from a wine perspective so that I can start charting which cellars and estates I shall be laying siege to in 2024. So keep an eye on social media, the Epic's channels, and mine as well at some point, and we'll let you know where the route is going next year. If you're a mountain biker, it's always a really exciting time, particularly if you're riding, but even if not, to see where the most famous mountain bike race in the world will be traveling. But also from a wine perspective, will we be back in the Hemelanada? Will it be a chance to move through Robertson down to Stellenbosch, maybe up somewhere like Toolbach, which would make one of our guests this evening very happy? We'll find out exactly where a little later on this evening, and there'll be some epic themed wine content on the horizon as a result. And in fact, pretty much everybody on the show today is from a part of the world that has, if not seen the epic itself, then been relatively close to it, because the winelands and mountain biking have become fairly well entwined, and all of our guests today are from parts of the wineland that certainly see their fair share of mountain bikers. They're all, though, for the greater importance of today's show, people who've got a dab hand in the art of making bubbles. And over the last couple of weeks, as you will have seen, I've been first in England and then in France for the opening weekend of the Rugby World Cup, and a lot of conversations about wine, especially in France. And one that came up with a pleasant degree of surprise was the number of people who could chat to me about South African bubbles, South African Cap Classique, South African champagne, as they frequently called it, and compared it very favorably to that which had been tasted in England, tasted in France. And I think that talks to the fact that Cap Classique in South Africa at the moment is in a healthy and exciting space. It's also quite a dynamic space, as we see a range of varietals increase, a range of interpretations, a range of styles, and all that comes together to form a part of the South African wine market that is doing particularly well. So on today's show, we talk bubbles with winemakers from different parts of South Africa. Joining us in no particular order, we will be heading up to Toolbach, where local lad Stephan de Beer is making the wine at Krone, and they've got some new stuff that's come out, some site-specific Cap Classique, as well as a very important, very exciting nectar. And nectar is driving a big chunk of that bubbles market. Also Darling, and they're celebrating some nectar, and Pieter-Niel will be chatting to us about that. RJ Buerta is with us from Kleine Zalze, and then from the heart of Robertson Cap Classique territory, Bon Courage, Jacques Bruwer is with us too. So our quartet of bubbles experts to talk about the state of bubbles on the back of the Amorim Cap Classique Challenge having been announced, the winners thereof. So we'll touch on some of that as well. You might, in the background, as I look out the window down towards what's currently the DHL Stadium, it could well be the Siya Kolisi Stadium by the 29th of October if we go back to back. You'll hear the wind whipping through outside. I am up on about the 31st floor, so that's the background noise. Set it aside though and focus on the bubbles conversation, which is coming up. Before that starts though, here's a quick look at some wine news. This is WineX. I've had a few people getting in touch, just asking for some more information. Will we be doing anything? Will we be part of it? I'm catching up with Michael Fridgell next week. We're definitely doing some stuff with WineX, but I'll let you know exactly what. The important news, though, in the context of WineX this week is that tomorrow the early bird tickets will go on sale. Your chance to get them ahead of everybody else. They raise in price over the 3 days, so the slightly more expensive ones on the Wednesday, up a touch on the Thursday, and then the premium, well, that's not really a premium on the Friday. What you pay versus what you get makes an almighty bargain, but pencil in your Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday night out, or if you are feeling particularly robust, do a Friday of bubbles, a Thursday of white, and a Wednesday of red, or toss the order around. Whichever way you do it, there's a huge amount of excellent wine. And with Standard Bank on board now supporting Michael and the WineX team, and a ready fantastic event becomes even more so. Get those early bird tickets from tomorrow. Upper Union, this is a spot that more and more people are talking about in Cape Town. And this is a restaurant that in Amori's got a wonderful chef, and she creates lots of small plates with a great deal of style, but even more substance. And she's been having a couple of wine dinners. The next one is coming up. This is at the end of September. Jasper Swerve out of the Swartland. It makes him really interesting, really exciting, really thought-provoking wine, which will bring the best out of Amori as chef. And that combination is one that is open to you. If you would like to get along, head over to the Upper Union website and you can get yourself some tickets to a night of fine food, fine wine, and a wonderful combination thereof. Jan Zamad, we've mentioned this once or twice, but it is one to really have a look at getting out to, just the other side of Paarl, 25th of November. The night festival, they're going luxury safari at Jan Zamad. They're making some really eye-catching wine at the moment, and eyes that have been caught include a number of the wine magazine judges over the last year or two. This should be a night of great festivity and a fair chunk of indulgence. 25 November, night festival at Jan Zamad. Another one for that bulging wine diary. All right, so a few events to look out for. If you look over my, where are we? There we go. Over my shoulder on that side. There we go. That's an old map of Constantia. So it gives my hotel room at the Cape Sun a touch of wine history and an appropriate note on which to charge into a conversation about Cap Classique, which I'm really looking forward to. Warm welcome to my guests this evening. Stephan de Beer joins us from Krone on the back of some exciting new releases. So, Stephan, a very warm welcome to you. Welcome to Jacques Bruwer, who is in from Robertson and Bon Courage, real Cap Classique territory. Pieter-Niel is with us from Darling Cellars, and RJ Buerter from Kleine Zalze. Guys, welcome to all of you. Lovely to have you on the show. And I've got congratulations all round because you've all been doing incredible stuff over the last little while. But I do want to kick off with you, Stephan. Principally because I want to set the scene for where we are at the moment. All of you guys are making some terrific Cap Classique, but with Krone, this is what you guys focus on. It's what you specialize on. It is what drives you every single day to jump out of bed and head down to the cellars. And when you decided on this path, you clearly thought there was definitely the market for a place that can just do Cap Classique and do it superbly, as you do. How much has that grown? How much has it met expectations? How much do you think the South African understanding and appreciation of Cap Classique has hopefully grown since you first kicked off?
Dan, thanks for having me on the show tonight. Look, Cap Classique, if I look back in time when I started here at Krone in 2007, the likes of Krone and the whole Cap Classique industry, for us, we only produced a small volume in total, about 200,000 bottles per year. And we've vastly grown our numbers. We've replanted, but not just for Krone, for the whole Cap Classique industry, there was a big movement going forward. And for us, we saw that, back then it was just the brut categories, the brut rosés, the brut blends, and there was no demi-sec category as such. And we decided to pursue that road. And wow, what the adventure! The Cap Classique industry. There's so many people out there who enjoys this type of product, and especially now we can see in the nectar range, known as the demi-sec, but moved into the nectar name category by itself. It's just phenomenal. I think it's the Cap Classique industry is growing still at a almost 10%.
You mentioned the nectar, and that's an important part of tonight's conversation, because in Johannesburg in particular, it is the bottle I see more and more of arriving at tables, arriving at bars, particularly with a slightly younger audience, people for whom the added sweetness, the added sugar makes it a little more accessible and introduces a lot of people to a space they might not otherwise be comfortable getting into, a zero dosage or a drier brut. Somebody who hasn't had wine can sometimes be a little sharp and a little bitter. So it is growing. I gather from your comments that it's maybe surprised you a little in terms of the extent to which it has grown. How important is this for you as Krone, as a brand, but also do you think for the South African Cap Classique industry?
Sorry, Dan, you broke up. I just heard the last 15 seconds. There must have been a connectivity issue here.
No problem. Just looking at that nectar, which you referenced, and I think you inferred that even you were taken a little by surprise at just how well the nectar category has done and continues to do. It's one I see a lot of in Johannesburg, particularly with a slightly younger audience, people for whom a slightly drier style, a zero dosage or a brut, might not be quite so appealing as they start their wine journey. How important is this nectar space for you? How important is it for Cap Classique in South Africa?
Oh, without a doubt, I think it's very important. I spoke to Johan Malan from Simon Sig the other day at the Soms tasting, and he had a good thought also about it. The young generation wine drinkers are coming into the demi-sec, Cap Classique styles, and they will eventually become the brut drinkers as their palate starts to develop. But for the night nectar, the whole Cap Classique category, the demi-sec has played a huge role in the growth of the whole category in such. So if you look at, demi-sec products are growing at a 15.1% rate over the same period as the brut and rosé. So it's outstripping the brut and rosé products. And if you look at like the first 50 MCC products, demi-sec have 18 products, which is 36%, but account for 42% of the sales. So it's an enormous. It plays a big role in the success of category going forward. I think it's great, and also everybody who's producing Cap Classique at the moment is producing a night nectar, and those who are not producing a night nectar is thinking about producing a night nectar. And we are in the process of launching our second premium night nectar, or nectar, the Nectar Blanc and the Nectar Noir, which we can talk about. But I think there's a big nectar. The nectar or the demi-sec category does play a big role, yes.
And one final question for you on that nectar space. When you talk about nectar as premium, there are a lot of the older, the more established Cap Classique drinkers for whom zero dosage, very dry, is the only way to go. And there's often a slightly look down, oh no, that's too sweet, I can't possibly drink that. But then they're also, from your bringing out an extended range of premium, a space where there are people who are drinking this happy to pay a bit more money for it and drink something that is in that slightly sweeter category, but is also speaking to a very premium wine. When you're making that as a winemaker, how do you combine those? How do you take that sweetness and that premium space and bring them together?
Dan, it's all about balance. If you start looking at the likes of Blanc de Blancs, it's the very prestigious category in the Cap Classique industry. You look at massive acidities and age on the lees, time on the lees. You look at 5 to 10 years, even spent the time on the lease on the crown. So when you do your dosage, a lot of people, they basically see that a zero dosage is a little bit more premium, which in my case, I feel that it's all about balance. You shouldn't discard dosage at all. Doesn't matter the age of the wine. You can have a harvest season of acidity, big, massive acidities, and the ageability of the wine is great. But after 5 years, you still need a little bit of dosage just to balance it out. And that's where it prickled us, our brains a little bit to not only, nobody says a nectar or a demi-sec can't be a prestigious class, So we decided to make this the Nectar Blanc, which is a 100% Blanc de Blanc. And we're also going to release the Nectar Noir, which is a 100% Pinot Noir. It's made from the best grapes we can find on the property. It spent at least 3 years on the lease, beautiful acidities. And because it's in the nectar category, you're not bound to any sugar levels as the demi-sec, as the Salvas law states. So you can play around with any sugar levels just to bring that bottle into the wine into balance. And it's so for us, premium quality wine is used, premium quality grapes is used, and we're trying to the best some of the best wines in the world are sweet wines. That's our view on it.
It's a changing of perceptions, and I think it's happening quite quickly, and it is thanks to people like Stephan that is happening. The accessibility and celebration is also thanks to people who are making award-winning wine in this space, and one of those is Darling Cellars. Pieter-Niel, welcome back to the show, and congratulations. The Amarim results have come out, and it is in the nectar space that you guys have been celebrated. Well done on that. Tell me a little bit about what that means to you guys, and to have this particular wine get recognized so well.
Yeah, Dave, thank you very much. It's really a great privilege and an honor for us. It's a project that's been coming on for some time. Where the Blanc de Blanc is a more well-known Cap Classique from us. The Nectar started a few years ago out of the question for people that's looking for a little bit something sweeter. And like Stephan said, the big thing about the Nectar is all about balance, to get the acidity and the freshness and the sugar levels just right in balance, and not too sweet, but also not too dry. But yeah, to receive this award is just amazing, and really humble about it.
The nectar category, we've already spoken about it with Stephan about how much it is growing. It is the case sometimes. Something just seems to absolutely take off in the wine world. How much has the growth of nectar surprised you guys? How much have you seen it develop in a short space of time?
Well, it's really amazing. It's typically a lot of people would like to enjoy the Cap Classiques, but they really wary about that dryness, that crispiness of normal Blanc de Blanc. So this little bit of sweetness is just catching those people that want to try it and really enjoy it. And in a few years' time, I believe they will enjoy the normal Blanc de Blanc. But then also the trend in the wine industry is to have something a little bit sweeter. And for us, the category is growing really rapidly, and it's doing really well for us.
It is one that now has an added sticker to put on the bottle and some added accolade. And having these sorts of accolades, seeing a nectar get a big award from something like the Amarim Challenge, might push people who are on that other side of the coin. I only drink dry, so I don't want to try sweet, to move into that space. Where I've found sweet for me, the demi-sec, the nectar has worked really well. Has been in a food space, often stuff that's a bit spicier, where that sweetness has got some competition. There is with nectar, there's a bit of variety to it. There is a bit more you can do with it than maybe people could initially give it credit for.
Oh, definitely. To receive the award from the Amarim Challenge is especially important to recognize the quality of the wine. Our nectar is made from Chenin Blanc, so it's a different from the Chardonnay. But again, just showing the potential of Chenin in the Cap Classique category. But also the flavors of the Chenin is working beautifully for our normal for the nectar.
It's also a wine that I have discovered works really well in the morning. I'm not a coffee drinker, so if I'm out on safari, I find that the added sugar gives me a blast in the morning. A quick final word on nectar before we jump over to Robertson, just in terms of the wine making and the challenge therein. When you're making a nectar, for people who don't really know how you make these now, how the difference is, what are the challenges or the differences in making a nectar as opposed to making a slightly drier style of Cap Classique?
I think the basics of the Cap Classique is exactly the same as Blanc de Blanc, where the big secret is coming in with the dosage, and there you have to use the right base or the blocks or building blocks of the dosage, and we've got a small volume of a little bit of barrel aged wine and some tank aged wine that we use to get the base of the dosage right, and then the sugar and the acidity level just to get it perfectly in balance. But like I said, this Cap Classique is really beautiful, and with food, it's doing really well.
I'm already feeling a little peckish after that. Let's jump over from Darling and head up to Robertson and catch up with the Bon Courage team and Jacques in particular. Jacques, and welcome back to the show. I asked Stephan a little earlier for his assessment from a toolbuck perspective as an out-and-out Cap Classique producer of how he felt Cap Classique was going at the moment in South Africa. Robertson is very much a spiritual home of bubbles in the South African wine story. Where do you feel we are at the moment? Is it an upward trajectory, and how well are we doing as a region in terms of Robertson and as a country in terms of South Africa with our production of Cap Classique?
Oh, thanks for the opportunity, Dan. Really, I think Robertson just says it all. The terroir is obviously exceptional for the producing of base wines for Cap Classique, especially our chalky Karoo soils with a high lime content in them, which actually produces the appreciated lower pH wines with the higher acidities. And then, of course, also the drier climatical conditions, which makes the air more healthy for the vineyards and to get optimum ripeness at the proper stage. I think that is exceptionally well for Robertson. And Robertson being also in the Cap Classique industry for 30 years now already, where the first wines were produced by Graham Beck in 1991. So yeah, I think from there onwards, we were starting very humbly small. We've grown tremendously on it. I think a lot of overseas markets actually also got introduced to our Cap Classiques from the Robertson region. So I think it's just phenomenal that Robertson is standing out on the production of it, especially the Chardonnay part of the base wine. And a lot of grapes these days get sold for base wine purposes from Robertson. So I think Robertson is playing a huge part in the production of South Africa's Cap Classique.
A lot of people get their first introduction to Robertson Cap Classique through Graham Beck, who you have mentioned. They then branch out and discover, well, actually, there are rather a lot of you in Robertson who make some exceptionally good Cap Classique. Bon Courage very much amongst them. How much did it take you as a family, and I know it's very much a family business, by surprise, just how much potential there actually was for Robertson to develop the kind of Cap Classique that is now being admired and appreciated around the world?
Yeah, okay. I think for us, we started very small. I had to start from old second-hand machines that were actually mothballed on the trees to produce my first base wine. So so very humble beginning, small scale. And I think a lot of these guys in Robertson are on small scale at the moment. While there is the bigger ones as well, producing a lot of Cap Classique like Graham Beck. But I think ours were on a small scale, family-owned business. And what started as an experiment in the early 90s actually turned out to be very good for us, exceptionally. And a lot of effort putting into it by producing it. And then obviously marketing. We've got a tremendous marketing team, Michelle Alford, which is she does the marketing for me locally, and I think she's been doing a great job for us for getting the Cap Classique introduced to the public. For us at the moment, locally we're doing quite good, but we've got a big export in the UK market, and that's working tremendously well for us at the moment.
What about the expansion of Cap Classique? We've already spoken about the nectar side of things, but we'll talk a little later to Stephan about his site-specific wines that Krone are now bringing out and across the market in South Africa, whether it's more rosés that are coming through or different varietals that are being used. There's a lot of experimentation, a great sense of adventure to a lot of the Cap Classique. Is that true of Moncourage? Is that true of Robertson, where you've realized just how much good you can do? Now's the opportunity to go even further and see what other boundaries you can push.
No, for sure, definitely. I think there's definitely a market for the nectar which the guys are buying in. We've taken the decision that we're going to keep it plain and simple. We're going to keep it old school. So we're not going to be actually introducing a nectar at the moment, because I think our operation is a bit small and I've already got 3 lines running. But it's very important to know that it all goes about balance, and it depends on what you want to drink. And I always feel if a Cap Classique is in a perfect balance, then you don't need that much sugar just to balance the wine, maybe get the sweet sensation. So if I can maybe say that our wines are more or less run about the 6 grams per liter of sugar against the 6.5 to 7 grams per liter of acidity. You also get a sweet sensation, not maybe as sweet as a nectar, but you will also get a sweet spot which is not sweet but not too crispy either. And I believe that for us, we're going to go old school, very traditional, lengthening lengthening the years on the lees, and creating a soft drinkable product which is basically ready to drink when it's released, and then you don't need that much sugar to drink it. So I believe there's a market for the younger drinking generation to maybe do a sweeter style wine, so you can get it early on the market to drink and to consume. But yeah, that is a way that you decide to go. If you want to play in that league, then obviously you can do that. I think that's very good for to get as much people or younger generations in this style of wine to start drinking it. So, but yeah, in our case, we will stay traditional with the drier styles, but not Brut Zero either, but with the dosage in it.
Let me ask you another question about age, not this time about the consumer, but about the wine itself. Something I've also picked up a lot more over the last couple of years in South Africa is people having an appreciation of the vintage. Sure, a lot of champagne comes as non-vintage, but a lot of our South African Cap Classique has a specific year, and people are noticing that and happy to try something a little bit older and see it develop. Is that just me hanging out with people who are also wine nerds, or is the South African wine public getting to understand the aging potential and the vintage importance of South African Cap Classique?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. We try to steer people in the direction to drink vintage Cap Classique. That is what we specialize in, trying to keep at least wine on the lees for 80 months before we release. And I think that is to make a vintage champagne is something special. Especially the Blanc de Blancs age very well. In our Blanc de Blancs age very well. We've seen that now in the past 4 or 5 years that we've been releasing vintages 5 years on the lees, even 8 years on the lees. So we are trying to get maybe to 10 years on the lees, but that's maybe more in the future. But at the moment, I think the vintage thing for us is working very good. And just trying to get people to understand that the aging potential of this wine, and the older the better, obviously, and then the sparkles just gets better and better with age.
Just as the wine is maturing, so it seems is the wine drinking audience. Let's jump over to our fourth guest, who is in Stellenbosch. And I know he's won something this week, because every week Kleine Zalze wins something. It's just how they operate. In fact, RJ's building a new cellar, not for wine. It's to put up all of his certificates. Such has been the success of Kleine Zalze over the last little while. Lots of great points coming up already so far this evening, RJ, from the success of nectar to the importance of aging to the breadth of varietal. You keep a keen eye on all manner of wines, serving in loads of different capacities for different varietals. Where does Cap Classique sit for you in terms of spaces that are getting you really excited about South African wine?
Gee, then, I've got to jump between putting my Super Brew score for tonight and talking to you. So, but thanks for having me on. Look, yeah, Cap Classique has been a journey for us. You know, we are a Stellenbosch brand, you know, renowned for making still wines, and we got into the game in 2009 with our first vintage, and what a journey! It's been amazing making these exceptional wines and being part of a growing trend. Not just locally, but internationally. You know, there's a growing trend for people drinking lower alcoholic wines and the freshness about it and sparkling. And for us as a business and as a proud wine producer, we want to play in that game. Of course, we want to make the best wines that we can, or the best sparkling wines that we can. And we play in sort of different categories as well. We also launched our first nectars at the beginning of the year, but our premium segment that we want to sell is a vintage wine. You know, longer on the lees, more structured, more developed. That is a little bit more accessible, and then of course the nectars that we launched at the beginning of the year, which is a growing category. It's getting consumers to engage and to drink more sparkling wine, and it's just a fun category. You know, we love being part of it. It's a lot of fun making it, and you know, just this morning we made up some samples for a client, and you know, just by making it, I sometimes wonder if the audience that drinks Cap Classique always knows how much effort goes into a bottle of Cap Classique. It is really an amazing bottle of wine, and the amount of effort that goes into producing this, if they sometimes know how much effort goes into this. So it is amazing to make these wines and to actually drink them and taste them afterwards. And you know, it is at least a 2 year project. You know, and we sit on that capital, we sit on that wine, we nurse them for 2 years to actually release them to the consumers. Yeah, just an amazing process.
I can't tell you whether or not the broader public appreciate it. I certainly do. But I think one of the suggestions that people do appreciate, if not the entire process, then certainly the results of that process, is that I sense in South Africa there's a closing of that gap, where not that long ago it was very much champagne is up here and Cap Classique is very much a second option. Now people are understanding that top end, that premium South African Cap Classique is every bit as good, not identical because we're not trying to replicate, but every bit as good as a bottle of French champagne in those middle to slightly higher tiers, and usually a third of the cost, if not less. I think we lost RJ there for just a moment. We got you back there, RJ. I think you're busy uploading the Super Brew score, and it blew your picking Romania to win has broken the internet.
I'm so far behind. I've got to choose France now. So I think I got the most of your question. We can compete with the best of them. You know, I travel quite regularly, and you know, 5 years ago, if you would have asked me, can we compete with champagne? You know, it was difficult because you know, even in a price segment, it was difficult. But these days, I think we are growing. South Africa is growing in exports in sparkling wines or in Cap Classique. And I think the world is noticing the quality of wines that we are producing. We come in at a competitive price just because champagne is champagne. There's such a big demand and hype around it, and productions are not, in the last 2 years have been a bit lower. So it gives us an opportunity to fill that gap. And once the consumer have tasted it, and South African Cap Classique, they actually recognize that the quality is amazing. So we have nothing to be scared about. We have nothing to be shy about when we take on the world stage of Cap Classique. To a point where there's a lot of projects with champagne being done in South Africa now. And let's not forget, the African market for champagne is big, and they want a piece of this. And I think this is where the South Africans are playing a great game. We have a sparkling wine drinking community that is growing, and I think it's up to us to fill that gap and make sure that we get the South Africans to drink it, we get the Africans to drink it. And of course, later on, export and compete, but we have nothing to be ashamed about.
Interesting you mentioned the African continent. Our tasting Norman Goodfellows this past Tuesday evening with Glen Carlo. Saw Peter Swanepoel from Glen Carlo talk extensively about the growing appetite for their wine in places like Botswana, Zambia, Mozambique. It is a growing market, and Siobhan Thompson said as much when we chatted to her, the CEO of Woza, a little earlier on this year. What then about your sense of the growth and the development of Cap Classique? Ajay, you guys have got one of the more enthusiastic magic cauldrons in South African wine. Your side projects are completely off the charts. You kind of wake up one morning and decide you're going to make a red Chenin Blanc or make some bubbles out of Cabernet Sauvignon. You do some crazy stuff, but usually with some really cool results. How much scope, how much capacity is there to take Cap Classique, to take bubbles into new territory and showcase that to the world as well?
Sorry, Dan. I think I'm not sure if it's your line or mine, but I got sort of every second sentence. But we I think I got the we keep pushing boundaries, and I had this morning when we were discussing the samples that we made up, and I actually took one of the samples out of the cupboard that we made up this morning, and I first of all want to show a lot of people that a sparkling wine actually starts like this. It's got a bit of a crown, it's got a cap on it, and it starts fermenting in the bottle. And only after 18 months, or in South Africa, or for Kleine Zalze, after 18 months, we start drilling it, and it will get a cork in it. That is the long process. But we keep on pushing boundaries, and I think that is what makes South Africa great. This is what makes I had a chat with some international guys the other day, and they said in the last 5 years the quality of South African wine has grown so much that they can. It's very obvious, and they said, what is the reason behind that? And I said, we are not scared to. South Africans are not scared to learn. And implement what we learn and talk to each other. We know that we've got to grow South Africa as a category instead of growing ourselves. So we really take that to heart, and we play with that. And we're pushing boundaries. And for instance, in South Africa and Kleine Zalze, as we are speaking, next week we'll bottle a amphora fermented Heritage Vineyards sparkling wine that will. That makes, developing nectars, as we call it in South Africa, and developing those products and high-end nectars. We are not scared to implement those things. We take leaps and bounds, and we're not scared. And it's amazing to be part of a wonderful, young, and dynamic industry that we have.
And the Kleine Zalze team have been at the forefront of that dynamism for some time now. And we're going to come back to RJ for the more important question of what's going to happen to the rest of the rugby, because I know he's off to the World Cup in the next little while. Let's head back over to Darling, though. And Pieter-Niel, I want to ask you a question about price, because the conception, the image of bubbles, of champagne in particular, but I think Cap Classique to a great extent as well, as this generally is, it's a more expensive product. It's a more costly product. When you hear RJ speak about just how much time you have to put in to creating a single bottle, you can understand that. And yet at Darling, where you've made a name for yourselves in combining value with quality, you're looking at your bubbles. I think I picked them up in the kind of 150 rand space or thereabouts, which is almost suspiciously inexpensive. And then you drink them and think they must have got the price wrong, but I'm not going to tell them because I like this price. And how are you able, particularly with the amount of time you need to put into the wine, to still deliver this kind of quality to the market, and a very appreciative market, and I get to drink bubbles at a very accessible price?
Dan, I think the biggest secret is that we've got control of the whole process. So we've got very dedicated farmers. We've got specific blocks that we use for our Cap Classiques, and we farm them according to the demand. And then at the cellar itself, we've got our own champagne lines, our degorging lines and riddling lines. And we've got dedicated people working on that, and we basically work every day with our Cap Classiques. So we don't have a lot of people working on it. We've got only 3 or 4 ladies that's working on the degorging lines. So we've got a very tight ship that we're running, very special people working there. Not big overheads. We're controlling the whole process ourselves, and we do all the work ourselves. And I think that is basically helping to keep the cost down. That's basically what we do, and we try to provide the best possible product at the best possible price.
The end result of a bottle of bubbles is generally one of joy, from the excitement of seeing the cork come out to watching the effervescence in your glass. It's an experience as much as anything else, but it's one that takes a long time to get there. As a winemaker, how difficult, how frustrating, how ultimately rewarding is it to produce Cap Classique as opposed to the other still wines that sit amongst your offering?
It's really an amazing process. They always talk about it's a piece of art. It's a process that started at least 2 years ago. You started in the vineyard with a special process of selecting the grapes, doing the whole bunch press, only taking the really special juice, 400-500 liters a ton that you take, the slow process of fermentation in the stainless steel tank, aging it on and then do the whole preparation of the second bottling for the second fermentation in the bottle. And then it's the waiting game for that 18 to 24 months to let it age and settle on the lees. And then once you're happy with how the wine has been aged on the lees, then start preparing the dosage. And that's also very important to get the right balance in the dosage. So it's really amazing to do this whole art of Cap Classique, and then at the end of the day to open a bottle. For me, it's really nice to open a bottle next to the sea. We some friends normally at Pearly Beach, where we open a lot of Cap Classiques, and just sitting there enjoying what we've started 2 or 3 years ago, and to see how it developed is just amazing. And it's really important to share that with other people and to teach them about it.
It is quite a process, but the rewards are immense, and not just for those of us who drink them, for the wine makers as well. Jacques, what about you for that process and the importance of it? The people are perhaps watching and thinking, okay, well, you've kept it for 2 years, but then you want to keep it for another year or another 2 years on top of that. Why is that making a difference? Why is that extra time so fundamentally important to getting the very best out of what you're trying to produce?
Well, I can say that then for me also to play the waiting game is also exceptional. It's something very nice actually endure, because you walk around that wines and you check them every year, every now and then just waiting for them to settle. And I think for us to go that extra length on the lees is just to make the wine more integrated in the bottle after the second fermentation, and obviously your bubbles will become smaller, much slowly released the older it gets. And I think it gives you just that great satisfaction if you can keep something for 8 years or 9 years on the lees, and when you open it, and what a surprise you get. And then thinking back that 8 to 9 years ago, yeah, it was that year like this, and we had that rain, we had a bit of drought, we had a good season, or we had a bit of frost and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very much rewarding to have a wine so old and to drink it and see that it's preserved so well and so nicely and still being so fresh. I think that is what makes this very exceptional.
Margie Brand watching the show at the moment. Awesome to think about the bottle I'll be drinking tonight as at least a 2-year project. That patience is one of the challenges of putting the wine together. One of the other challenges is making the non-vintage, and surely that must be easier. You just throwing a whole pile of wine together and bang, it is all done. It's of course a lot more complicated than that. Jacques, that art of a non-vintage, for me, it looks like it must be one of the most challenging in the wine industry, because you're attempting to create often a house style or create something where you've got to pick little bits from past vintages and somehow in your head put that puzzle together and know, right, if I've got a bit of this and a bit of that and they all come together, that's going to make it perfect. How challenging is that whole process?
Well, yeah, definitely. For making a non-vintage, I think it might be more challenging than to create a vintage, because with the vintage you just use your vintage that you are capable of. But sometimes maybe you might get a vintage that maybe lacks a bit of maybe you had a bit of problems with the vineyards or the grapes, and you had to create something from nothing. And then I think that is where the blending purposes comes into play. And if you have got a fair amount of base wines lying around in your cellar with small bits and pieces, and you can bring up something with a non-vintage, yeah, for sure, I think you can make one of the best Cap Classiques in that way as well. And what also is very nice about a non-vintage is that you can keep the style consistent from year to year to year. So if you can create a champagne drinker or a Cap Classique drinker which is familiar with a specific style, and you can create that style which they like, you will be always having a market to sell that wine in. So yeah, no, obviously there's a great potential for non-vintages as well. And obviously you can get into the market, I think, also at a much more competitive price than with a vintage. So yeah, I think to keep it plain and simple, yeah, non-vintage is definitely a wine that also you can market, and you can do it very, very well.
There's a lot of work that goes into this Cap Classique business, as we are seeing this evening. There's also a whole heap of variety. And I did say I wanted to check in very quickly before we wrap up the show with Stephan about the site-specific wines. Clearly, Stephan, you feel there is enough of a market as Krone to go into this relatively small-scale production. Tell me about these site-specific wines, what sets them apart, and why they're getting you excited, because I'm pretty sure they are.
Yeah, Dan, this is a project that's been, we come a long way. We started this thinking process in 2016. It's all evolved from the grower champagne ideas, where they are focused on the terroir, on a Cap Classique. Also never been seen in South Africa in a lineup. So we decided to focus on terroir, not just a time on the lease, which is for us, again, also a lot educational to learn and see how this product can develop, but to taste terroir and to see what difference the terroir makes to a Cap Classique. So we started visiting sites in the Elandskloof ward at a farm called Kaimansgat. We started, it's one of the oldest Chardonnay blocks in the country. And we decided to make a Cap Classique from that site. But to have a terroir specific wine, you have to go the natural fermentation route. And that was our first experiment, and it actually turned out really good. We were quite excited about the product, and then we decided to explore a bit, and we eventually got 2 more sites. One of the sites is in Tulbagh. It's a single vineyard. All the blocks are single vineyard certified. So it's a beautiful block of Chardonnay here on Twee Jonge Gezellen. And then the third one is in Koelfontein, which is in the Ceres Plateau. And in order to make these wines, you have to do all natural fermentation. All the wines are made in exactly the same way, bottled on the same day, same vintage conditions as well. And then at the end of the day, 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, you taste the wine, same cultivar, same winemaking procedures, but they're totally different. They are so different and unique in its own way. And that is the whole purpose of this project, is to educate and to taste the terroir and the beauty of the terroir, of these beautiful sites that we have in South Africa, and what the sites can offer. So yeah, we are very excited about that. We're also exploring in different fermentation vessels. We only focus on Cap Classique, so we try to experiment in all way we can, in every way possible. But yeah, we are very excited about the terroir or the site-specific wines.
Those will be available, and adding yet another chapter to this great Krone Cap Classique story. RJ, just as we wrap up and you try and work out how the Chilean pack is going to go in their next Rugby World Cup match, this surge of South African Cap Classique, it seems to just be on this consistently upward trajectory, on a roll, and getting better, getting bigger, doing more and more for us. Is there a horizon in sight, or is this something that's just going to keep on going and keep on improving for us?
Dan, I think it's going to keep on. My personal opinion about it, I think the world is moving towards drinking lighter style wines. I think if you just look at the trend of drinking, red wine is not growing as much. White wine sales in the world is still. I think the trend will continue for the foreseeable future, where people will celebrate more. They will drink sparkling wines because it is light, it's fresh. We must remember the world is getting warmer as well, so people want to drink cooler drinks, sparkling drinks that is lighter, that is refreshing. So I can just imagine that this trend is going to keep on going and going and going.
All right, well, let's hope that it's a success that is mirrored in one other space that is close to all of our hearts. And I've got one last very quick question for all 4 of you gentlemen. 28 October, when a guy called Sia in a green jersey lifts a trophy for the 2nd consecutive tournament, I want to know what bottle from your respective cellars you are opening. You've got one there, Stephan. Is that the one you're going to be pouring if we win the World Cup again?
I'm going to be pouring both of these, Dan. It's the nectar for the sweet victory we're going to have.
Beautiful. Pieter-Niel, what are you pouring as and when we win that trophy?
Well, the same. A little bit of sweet win.
All right, we're on to a trend. Jacques, what's going to be in your glass, if indeed it makes the glass? I think you might be drinking out the bottle if we win.
Yeah, well, I will try not to drink out of this bottle, but I will definitely go for the 2014 Cuvée Rosé Brut of Bon Courage, which is about 6 grams, so it's semi-dry.
Oof, sounds delicious. RJ, I know you're off to the quarterfinals. You might not come back if we do well, so you'll have to take some with you just in case. What Kleine Zalze are you opening if we win the World Cup?
Dan, if we get through the quarterfinals, I might get divorced because I'm not sure I'm coming back, but we'll see. If it hopefully it's some Kleine Zalze 2015 Brit. Well, but I can't promise, I can't promise.
All right. Look, whichever one it is, it'll be both a sweet taste of victory, but also celebrating one great team with another, because I know all of you guys, while the faces of your respective cellars have got incredible teams who are putting together some great wine, and in the case of all four of you, getting some wonderful accolades for that wine. I think you've all said very clearly as a group a couple of important things. One is that Cap Classique is doing really well in South Africa. Two is that the market is growing and understanding more of it. And three, that the exciting times show no sign of stopping, and that is fantastic. It's a real driver for South African wine, and you guys are all playing a really big role in that. So RJ, Jacques, Pieter-Niel, Stephan, guys, thank you very, very much indeed. Lovely to have you all on the show. Lovely to be sharing some stories and sharing some background on Cap Classique. I know there's lots of excitement with all of you for upcoming wine, so it won't be too long before we see you again. But until then, head off to the fridge. Make sure those 4 bottles are nice and chilled, because I think you could be needing them come the end of October.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Dan. Lekker bokka.
There we go. Representing Kleine Zalze and Darling Cellars, and also representing Bon Courage and representing Krone, for great South African winemakers, with a story that is just so important to South African wine at the moment, especially as champagne sales struggle a little, or if not the sales, and certainly the ability to keep up with the demand. So there's an opportunity for Cap Classique to step in and pick up some of that slack, and to do so with an increasingly wide variety of bubbly options. And gee, there are some good ones in South Africa at the moment. That wraps us up for the show for this week. I'm going to head downstairs to go and launch the route for the Absa Cape Epic for 2024. Keep an eye on social media if you're a mountain biker, and find out where in the Cape the world's best cyclists will be riding in about 6 months' time. I'll be back with a show again on Monday. We've got some rather special sommeliers on the show, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll leave it till Monday to let you know who to expect. Until then, grab yourself a bottle of South African Bubbles, swing it back and enjoy. It's great wine made by great people, and it's doing South Africa proud. Goodbye. This is Q Bar Rosebank in Johannesburg. And this is Q Bar in the heart of Stellenbosch. And one of these two will be the venue for you and a friend for an unforgettable evening if you win this month's competition with Norman Goodfellows. You'll be treated to welcome bubbles and incredible wine tasting with the world-class sommeliers at both Q Bars. And you'll also have either a cheese platter in Stellenbosch or a sushi platter in Johannesburg, and membership of the exclusive Coin Rock Members Club. And all you have to do to win this incredible prize during the month of September, buy any bottle of either Coin Rock or Norhook wines, with Q Bar being the home to both, and you'll go into the draw for that fabulous prize and a Q Bar experience you'll never forget.